This is Covering the Spread. Here are your hosts, Jim Saunders and Dr. Ed Feng.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com, where today we are previewing the divisional round of the NFL playoffs with Kelly Stewart of Bleacher Report, getting our thoughts on all four games and her favorite bets for this week. My name is Jim Saunders. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work over at thepowerrank.com. Ed, the wild card round lived up to the billing. A wild weekend capped off by an absurd Browns victory over the Steelers. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I was walking my dog during the start of that game. So you check the phone, it's like 14-0 Cleveland. That's not good. And, you look at the phone, you're like, there hasn't been many yards in this game, couple turnovers, fine. Check the phone again. 28-0 Cleveland. And clearly turnovers played a big role in the game. Cleveland was +5. But, if you spot Cleveland a 14-point lead, but you tell me that Pittsburgh's going to score 37 points in that game, I'm like, no problem, right? They're going to win. They probably even cover the 4 or the 6 or whatever. Massive fail by the Pittsburgh defense. Just massive. I mean, a unit that's just been awesome, right?
Right. I mean, I think at some point the injuries just piled up too much to where they couldn't keep up because they lost a lot of important players on that defense, and that does not excuse what happened against Cleveland. That was outrageous, and kudos to Cleveland. They stepped up with no Kevin Stefanski. They did throw the ball more a little bit, as you had mentioned, hoping that they would do so with no Stefanski, but they overcame a lot. What's that?
I was actually hoping they wouldn't. I had Pittsburgh -4. So, but
right.
So it goes.
But an impressive showing there, and honestly, just it's been interesting to watch them because my prior assumption going into Cleveland after Odell Beckham got hurt was like, okay, there's this narrative that because there's no Odell, Baker's not forcing the ball to him, that they will play better. I thought that was a pretty trashy narrative. And
sure.
I don't know if I'm wrong in that, but the sample's getting larger of them playing really well without Odell. Now, correlation causation, is that why they're playing better? Probably not. I think it's a situation where they got more comfortable with Stefanski's schemes. Baker got more comfortable in his third year. I feel like it's more those things, but reinvestigating previous priors for me with regards to that team with no Beckham, it hasn't looked good, regardless of the way things play out. I don't know what the cause is, but regardless, I mean, kudos to them for stepping up when they've been missing a really key piece of that offense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, overall, I'm not too excited about Cleveland. Their pass defense is terrible, and they're going to Arrowhead this weekend. So I don't think their playoff run is going too much longer.
And the Steelers have said the same. Chase Claypool was talking this week about how they're going to get clapped in Kansas City. So, the Steelers are on board with that. They just keep on going, even after the season is over for them, because why not? We're going to break down go ahead, Ed.
Oh, I said why not? Yeah.
We'll be talking about the divisional round here in a second and not discussing the Pittsburgh Steelers because they are not involved. In a little bit with Kelly Stewart. You can find her on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas. Check her out on Bleacher Report, Wager Talk, and also she's the host of the Bet On It podcast. We're going to preview every divisional round game with Kelly, get her thoughts on those, and also how she alters her betting process when it comes to the playoffs when there's less to bet on and lines may be more efficient. So we'll talk with Kelly in just a bit, but also we're going to go back through last week in the wild card round, go through what went right, what went wrong. We had Nick Costos on to preview that. We are down to once weekly podcasts here on Covering the Spread. So to make sure you get those podcasts right as they are posted, make sure you are subscribed on your service of choice. Just search for Covering the Spread wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure you are subscribed there. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. It may be just once per week, but still a lot of good stuff coming your way over the coming months. We'll be talking plenty. Baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever it may be, we'll be talking to here on Covering the Spread, and plenty of more NFL to come as well. Before we get into Kelly, we got to go back to last week and check out what we got right and wrong for the wild card round and the national championship.
Covering the past.
So last week here on Covering the Spread, we had Nick Costos on to preview the NFL wildcard round and the College Football National Championship. You can find Nick on Twitter at the Costos and check out his work on You Better You Bet on radio.com. Nick and I were both on the Rams plus 3.5 against the Seahawks. He said he didn't mind even if Wolford wound up starting, which he did wind up starting. I was assuming Goff would start. That didn't happen, so bad read by me in the situation. The news broke about a half an hour before kickoff that Wolford would start. Still closed at Seattle -3, but the Rams' defense was lights out, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to be on the Rams there. I thought the defense would play well against that Seahawks offensive line. Goff didn't play well after he came in, but they also did enough elsewhere to win that game 30-20, so a cover, even with the things breaking against the way I thought that things would break out. But, I think that the thought process regardless was there. They were getting Andrew Whitworth back. That's a big upgrade for the entire offense, regardless of who's playing quarterback. Cooper Kupp was back as well. So the read on the injury situation, Ed, might not have been great for me, but I think the overall thought process and buying the Rams against Seattle made sense.
Yeah, and I think you got to think a lot of the same things this upcoming weekend against the Packers. Just also know that Aaron Donald didn't play for the majority of the second half.
Yeah,
and kind of didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
I think there's. Yeah. I mean, they. I don't know if I talked about it, but everyone knows about Jalen Ramsey at the cornerback position, but they got two other guys back there that have been really, really good this year, and that has really driven the Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's a fun matchup with him against Green Bay this week because Green Bay, not a lot of depth at wide receiver, so if Jalen Ramsey can at least kind of hold his own against Devontae Adams, could get pretty sticky. But regardless, I think that'll be an interesting one for sure with Los Angeles. Nick wanted the under 44.5 for Washington against Tampa Bay. I'm curious how he would have felt about this one if we had known on Wednesday that Taylor Heineke would start instead of Alex Smith, because with Heineke starting, the total did go up a half a point. It closed at 45 with Heineke being confirmed as the starter, and they combined for 20 points in the fourth quarter. The total finished there at 54 total points, so a loss on that one. But honestly, I thought that Heineke played kind of well. I don't know if he's an upgrade from Alex Smith, but he kind of plays more towards overs just because he's less conservative than Smith. So even if he's not a better quarterback, he would play against betting it under, it seemed like.
Yeah, I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he threw the ball downfield with accuracy. Not enough to get it done against a team that I really like, and I see going pretty far, but great performance. I mean, and they needed every bit of it to just cover, right?
Right. And you had mentioned, this is unrelated to Heineke, but you talked about when we were doing the episode with just the two of us about how the Bucs offense had untapped upside. They kind of showed that in that game. They played really well despite facing a really tough pass rush, something that Brady had struggled with this year, and he'll have to compete with once again this week. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure, when we talk about Bucs versus Saints. Nick had the Ravens -3 against Tennessee. I thought this one might move toward Tennessee, but it did close at Baltimore -3.5, and that was for a good reason because the Ravens went down 10-0 early, but the defense clamped down. They bottled up Derrick Henry. The Titans insisted on running the ball even when it was clearly not working, and the Ravens wound up winning and covering 20-13 in that game. Nick was on the Bears-Saints over 47.5. That one closed at 48, so a half point of movement in his favor, and the Bears just never were able to do anything, which is not a surprise, I guess. Finished with just 30 points there. That was an under that hit there. I mean, the Bears offense, I think that performance pretty predictably bad in that game.
Right. And then the guy drops the touchdown pass, which deflates them even further. And, I mean, nothing went right after that.
Yeah. I was worried about the Bears because of Trubisky, and obviously the supporting cast was the bigger cause for the Bears' struggles here than Trubisky, but regardless, not ideal. But hey, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy back again for 2021, so what could go wrong there? Finally, both you and Nick wanted the over for Ohio State versus Alabama. It closed at 74, or it was 74.5, and we talked, closed at 75, and we talked about this in the show, but when Nick came on, he said, what's the total for that game? I want the over. And you were like, yeah, I agree. That's the right way to view this thing. And we got the over early in the fourth quarter. Najee Harris had a touchdown to put it at 76 points with 13 minutes left. There were no points the rest of the way, but hey, a no-sweat bet can't complain about that. That's definitely a good way for things to break on a Monday night. We can just enjoy the game for the final quarter.
Yeah, it was a minimal sweat game, I would say. Yeah. But there should have been more points at the end of that game. Ohio State brought it down. I thought they got the short end of a call with an Olave touchdown. And then kind of the end of the game, running the ball, running it out, kind of kicked in. But, the only thing that made me feel uncomfortable is that my dear friend John Sheeran was leaning towards the under at 74.5. I kind of thought I saw like a 76 at FanDuel before the game started.
Yeah.
But you say it closed at 75?
That's what I had. It's possible that it didn't. It was somewhere or different somewhere else or different at a different time. But I had it at 75 when I checked last. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think John and his team take as many stands on college football games as they do on like an NFL side.
Right.
But yeah, I was we talked. I mean, I bet that so early. And then we talked about it really early, right? I mean, almost.
It was on Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, 5 days before the actual game, and so you're sitting there waiting to see what's going to happen with line movement and stuff like that. So that was just kind of a long wait, especially through all the NFL games that happened over the weekend. But it worked out. Pretty happy with it.
Yeah, and obviously a good bet. It paid off, and that Alabama team, man. Like I know Ohio State's defense, specifically the secondary, is not the most elite unit, but like, does it even matter at this point? Like Alabama, like I was reading some Bill Connolly stuff about comparing them to previous championship teams, specifically LSU last year. Like that's a really good football team. And I feel like it's going to go overlooked in like the grand scheme of things because it was the weird pandemic year, but like what a disgustingly good team Alabama was this whole year.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of asking a lot of my college football people whether this was Nick Saban's best team ever. Yeah. And I think that goes if you're Nick Saban's best team ever, you're in the conversation for just best team ever. I think they probably are. I mean, there wasn't the best defense they've ever fielded. But just super impressive. Speaking of Ohio State's defense, I actually thought Shaun Wade, the cornerback from Ohio State, played pretty well. Wasn't the disaster that was the Clemson game on a lot of plays. So his draft stock might go up a little bit, but and I thought Justin Fields could have played a little bit better too. I think that game's a little bit closer if he can play a little better, and then if the defense can just get a couple stops, it probably could have been a little closer, but it wasn't. And I think we should celebrate this Bama team for what they are, which was just excellent.
Yeah, I think that Fields will be a very interesting discussion heading into the draft, assuming he goes in, because
how is he not?
I mean, I would. I mean, like, when they were talking about forcing the Big Ten, like suing the Big Ten to play, like, that was the reason, so that they could get him in the draft for this year with a really good stock, because if he goes in with no tape from this year, it's going to be a tough sell. But if you look at all quarterbacks drafted since 2010, Justin Fields faced the toughest schedule of any quarterback, which makes sense. There was no non-conference play. He played a Big Ten championship game. He played a semifinal and the national championship. So it makes sense that he had the toughest schedule. But, like, you have to take that into account, too, when you're analyzing Justin Fields. Just know that he had the toughest schedule a drafted quarterback has ever faced since 2010. Like, that's when I have data back to based on defensive SP plus numbers from Bill Connolly. So take that into account when analyzing Justin Fields.
I'm certainly not any kind of draft expert or any kind of expert at like evaluating quarterbacks or whatnot, but I think you got to consider him for the top pick. I don't know if you take him as the top pick, but I got to think he's in that conversation. I think he's that good.
I wouldn't go first because the value and predictability from large samples is huge in the NFL draft, which is why Trevor Lawrence makes a lot of sense as being the first overall pick. But number two, he should be there. I think that both he and Zach Wilson are very viable for the Jets at number 2. And the Dolphins at 3 should look long and hard at those guys. I love Tua Tagovailoa, but like if you're in a position to draft a quarterback, you have to do your homework at least. Like I'm not saying you have to draft them there, but you got to do your homework. Maybe you trade down or whatever. But like I think both Zach Wilson and Justin Fields are deserving of being in consideration for that number 2 pick behind Trevor Lawrence. And I'm sure we'll have some betting props on them on FanDuel Sportsbook soon. I did check earlier this week. Nothing yet outside of Trevor Lawrence. So We'll circle back to those once they are posted. We'll also get into the divisional round here with Kelly Stewart in just 1 second. But first, the NFL playoffs are in full swing, and FanDuel Sportsbook is making sure you have the opportunity to get in on the action with some of the best possible odds on the market. Right now, new users can wager up to $5 on any team to win their divisional or conference championship game at plus 2,500 odds. That is right, a $5 bet on any team to win any game before the Super Bowl can win you $125. So you like the Chiefs this week? $5 gets you $125 against the Browns. Bet the money line there. Wildcard weekend is divisional round, just a few days away. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and make your first deposit to see the enhanced odds today. Must be 21 plus and present in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Colorado, West Virginia, Tennessee, Iowa, or Indiana. New users only. Must wager on designated boost market. Deposit required. Max bonus $125. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in Colorado, call 1-800-522-4700. In West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Or in Indiana, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Or in Tennessee, call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Let's get into Kelly Stewart and talk with her about the divisional round this weekend. Check Kelly out on Bleacher Report, Wager Talk, and also on the Bet On It podcast. She is on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas. We're going to get her thoughts on all 4 games this weekend and how she alters her betting approach with the playoffs on the mend.
Covering the present.
Let's bring Kelly Stewart back into covering the spread to preview the NFL divisional round of the playoffs. Kelly, it is a pleasure once again. How you doing today?
Life is pretty good. We just need to have another weekend like last weekend, and it'll be even better.
I mean, 6 games was exciting, and I was pumped for that. But by the end, and especially by Monday night, I was kind of dead. Like, did you have a similar feeling where you were like so jacked going in, but it was almost like, I don't want to say too much because that's complaining about a good thing, which I never want to do. But I was drained by the end. Like it was a lot.
So I have to tell you, I was on the East Coast, and I've never been on the East Coast during football season, and I was exhausted. I fell asleep during halftime of the football team Bucks game, and I fell asleep during halftime of the Browns-Steelers game. That is no lie. So maybe I was exhausted, but I don't think it was from football fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, that's very fair. But, like, honestly, like, East Coast is terrible for football, so, like, you know, Vegas, just stay there, honestly, because I was on the West Coast. I've been an East Coast person. I've been here for a while. I was on the West Coast for an event, and the baseball game starting at 4 o'clock. So, like, daily fantasy lock was at 4 o'clock. I didn't want to leave for that reason alone. Like, you know, missing things when you wake up and stuff like that. Like, I think you've got it right. So I feel like, you know, if you ever do leave Vegas, I think Pacific time needs to be in the criteria for moving.
I think it's like this. I'd rather just sleep till noon, though, and then just get up and start my day, go to bed at midnight. I'm kind of a night owl anyway, but it was really funny. I think the day drinking, watching football didn't help either. Plus, Saturday was so awesome. To cash all 3 tickets. I just felt like it was just one of those really fun days. I was with my family, walking up and down the beach, checking scores, stopping at a beach bar, seeing the Rams just absolutely dominating after that Colts exciting performance. You know, Grandma's standing there at the bar with me, and she's cheering so hard because she wants the Bills to win. And I'm going, no, Grandma, the Bills can only win by less than 6.5. This is how this works. Otherwise, you're picking up the tab. You know, so it's funny to experience kind of those things because I can't tell you the last time I got to go out of town during football season. So fun times.
Yeah, that's awesome that you got a chance to head out. So Kelly, let's kind of take a look back at our season. The regular season's all wrapped up. Anything that you're changing with your process and what you've learned from football season 2020?
I mean, let's be real. All of us kind of had this moving goalpost for the season, right? I think you tweeted out something week 3 regarding home field advantage, and it was like, look, basically we have less home field advantage than we've ever had before. Yeah. We all kind of knew that, but your data proved it. And so once we kind of got over that hump of saying, look, we're playing all these games on a neutral field of sorts where you had some teams that really had that home field advantage, like the Bills did, versus teams that really didn't, like the Chargers, right, or the Rams. So it was kind of just one of those things we started to figure out, but I tried not to change too much too quickly. I tried not to overreact, and I think that that's where I did really well, is trying to find those spots where the market did overreact. And that was like one of the number one things early on. I'd say the first 6 to 8 weeks was really great. And then, as you know, the NFL market is one of the sharpest markets. And so it kind of adjusted itself. And I really started to, in about mid-October, start to look for certain spots every single week that were working for me. And those were dogs between 1.5 and 2.5, whether they're on the road, whether they're at home, 2 team 6-point teasers. There was 6 weeks in a row where we hit these teasers. And it's really important to make sure that I remind people you're not laying over $1.20 for those teasers. If you're laying $1.40 or so on, depending on which book you shop at that point in time, they're not really worth it. If you could find $1.10 somewhere, God bless you, because those days are pretty much gone. But those kind of things. And then third, one of the things I really started to pick and choose was every single week you could find 2 or 3 divisional dogs that were absolute and utter money. And I had my good buddy Ralph Michaels pull the stats for me, and divisional home dogs ended up only being 33-30 on the season against the spread. But if you actually look at them winning outright, they did better in that terminology as far as, so if they were a 2.5-point home dog, they actually winning the game outright. So if you're actually placing a money line wager instead, they were more profitable. Now, I don't know how exactly to take that into the 2021 season. What are we going to see next year? You know, you and I, we guys were all talking about, hey, what's the future look like? Hopefully next year, fans get to be at the games. Hopefully they're as normal as humanly possible and we can kind of go back to things we've seen. But this year was definitely a unique year, and I just really tried to adjust without over-adjusting too much.
I think that's always a key, trying to keep yourself grounded, take in the information that you can, adjust to that, but also make sure you're not overreacting. Like, that's something that can translate beyond to 2075, not just 2021 for sure. That's always a good lesson for sure. But now we're moving into the playoffs, and there aren't a lot of games to bet, obviously. Usually we have 16 games to pick from. We can ignore half those a lot of the time and not bet those at all. Here there are just 4, but we still want action. You know, we're bored people. We want to have something on the line here. But they're also really sharp lines because there's so much money, there's so much market concentration on these games. It's tough to find good lines. So how do you alter your process when it comes to betting in the playoffs? Are you betting different markets? Are you more into player props? Or is it largely still the same for you as far as which markets you're going into versus the regular season?
I honestly love the playoffs. The wild card weekend is my favorite weekend of the year because there is such an influx of public money that does influence the market. People tend to bet so much more than they normally would during the regular season. Plus, there's less games, right? And so you have, I feel like, a competitive advantage as somebody who has their own numbers built in. The Colts being one of those games, the Washington football team, and the Rams, all 3 on Saturday. I had the Rams as a 1-point underdog. When they were at 3, I said, look, this is crazy. You had Washington football team. After Alex Smith got announced out, the line moved way too much. You have to understand that the difference between a starting quarterback sometimes and a backup may only be 1 point, maybe 2 points. And when the market tends to really kind of go crazy on it, you can find that value. As we saw, it landed on the original opening number of 8. The bookmakers did a really good job because, well, as you mentioned, this is a really tight market. So I actually love these weeks, and I do think you can find some loopholes. I wish that I had time to get into the player prop market. During the regular season, college football and NFL is such a main focus for me. And once I realized that college football, outside of a couple of conferences, was just too much for me this year, I was really focusing on the Big 12 and the Big 10, a little bit of SEC. Just given the current landscape and games being canceled, it felt like every single week, 2 or 3 games I really liked got canceled. So I really started to just hone in on a couple of conferences that I knew I had a decent grip on, that I could also get good information on. That was really that. And so I was able to focus a lot more on NFL. But, you know, player props is such a huge market, especially with your guys' sponsor at FanDuel. I mean, look, these guys do such a great job. They have same game parlays where you can parlay all these different player props together. I love it. It is something that I need to start to focus on. But when your NFL market is doing so well, you tend to not want to get out of your comfort zone, right? Why add something else into the mix, especially if you have friends in low places where, hey, we can share some information. Oh, you like these 3 player props? Okay, well, here's the 2 sides and the total that I like.
Yeah, Kelly, you bring up a really good point too. Also, but with just the public money coming in, I had Chris Andrews on the Football Analytics show this week, and he was saying exactly that. Like, that changes a lot of things because, the books need to balance their action. And I think that's a good thing for everyone to be thinking about over the next couple of weeks. Let's get into a couple games. We have Rams at Packers. Packers are a 6.5-point favorite with a total of 45.5. I feel like this game comes down to evaluating the impact of injuries on Jared Goff and Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp. How do you see this playing out?
No, you're absolutely right. Those are my three main notes. How is Jared Goff going to respond 3 weeks post-surgery? Now, let's just be honest. We just talked about drop-off in quarterback play. As we saw, not much of a drop-off. So Jared Goff, I kind of have a big line through him. I don't think it matters whether he plays or not. One of my favorite mantras in betting is take the better defense plus the points. The Rams are by far the better defense here, not if Aaron Donald doesn't play. Point blank, period, the end. He is, to me, going to be the difference maker in this game. If he can get to Aaron Rodgers, if he can get him off his game, I think the Rams are a live dog. If he doesn't play, I want no part of this game. I do know that the under did get steamed by a couple of sharp groups that I get a lot of good information from, and I know that the books are going to need the Rams. That doesn't mean I'm going to get to the window with the Rams. I think the play here for me is the Packers in a teaser, and I'll tease them with another game we're going to talk about here in a minute. I really would love, you guys know I love those dogs, I would really love to get to the window with the Rams, and I'm going to wait. Coming off that key number of 7, I'm going, okay, some sharp group played this Rams team. What am I missing? I think the line's a little bit high. So I think the Packers in a teaser is the right spot for me.
Let's say that we get news on Thursday, because that's when the injury report comes out. Aaron Donald has not practiced yet so far this week, but Sean McVay said he's going to play. Let's say Aaron Donald gets into full practice on Thursday. Is that a situation where you'd feel comfortable betting the Rams plus 6.5, or do you think the only play for you will wind up being the Packers in a teaser?
I have a really good feeling I'll end up on the Rams come Saturday. I know how my brain works, and at times I tend to be very contrarian. I'm technically rooting for some Packers futures in my household, if that gives you any inclination. So I may end up on the Rams as kind of an emotional hedge there. But yes, you're correct. If Aaron Donald is a full go, I do think that this could easily be a 3-point game. The Packers win late. I really do think this defense can get to him. My one question is, I saw Todd Furman tweeted this out earlier, and it was funny about under freezing temperatures for the Packers, and I immediately pull up the weather, and it says 35. So me being my smart aleck self, I'm like, Todd, it's going to be 35 in Green Bay. This stat doesn't count, and obviously it will be colder come game time, especially in the second half. And you do have to kind of wonder how warm weather teams are going to perform there. Let's use Jared Goff for an example. I'm not that old, but let me tell you, when it gets cold outside, some of those old nagging injuries start to hurt a little bit. I'm sure that they can find something to get Goff through the game with his thumb, but something to kind of think about there as well. But yes, I'll most likely, I have a feeling, end up on the Rams come kickoff, but being it's Wednesday, I'm not ready to commit just yet.
Understandable, especially given, just that mental block of betting on Jared Goff on a Wednesday. It can get to you, for sure. I understand that. As someone who's been burned financially by Jared Goff 1,000 times in the past, I can empathize for sure.
It was very hard for me to take the Rams on Saturday because I had just taken them versus the Seahawks a couple of weeks prior, and I had them in a teaser plus 8.5. So all I needed them to do was just either not let Seattle score that late touchdown or just get through the back door, and they couldn't get it done for me. It was rather frustrating, to say the least.
I can relate, believe me. I can fully relate. Let's move to the Ravens and the Bills, the Saturday night game. Bills here are 2.5-point favorites. The total is 50.5, and this Ravens offense has been looking pretty good recently, but they've largely done it against lower-level defenses. Tennessee, one of the worst defenses in football. I think that last week came back from a 10-0 deficit. The Bills aren't elite, though, either. Can they do enough here to slow down Lamar Jackson in this game?
One of the things with the Bills that's interesting, and I noticed this, was it week 3 they played the Rams? The Bills cannot seem to stop the run, and I can't figure out why. They may stop the run for 2 quarters. They may stop the run for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden, they just can't stop the run, and I don't understand why. And it infuriates me when I bet on the Bills. It doesn't infuriate me last week when I bet against the Bills. Look, I think what we saw last week was the Bills kind of on the ropes for the first time in a few weeks, right? This has been a team that has been on fire against the spread. It was a freight train I was very nervous to step in front of. But I said, look, Phillip Rivers and the Colts had not been an underdog all season. This is downright disrespectful. I'm going to take the points here. And they had a chance to win it there at the end. They couldn't get it done. The Bills got that monkey off their back, right? They got to win a playoff game. Their 6,700 fans at the stadium were like it was a full stadium. They were going nuts, and I was really happy for them. This line is really fishy to me. I don't think it should be 2.5. I'm really confused by it opening at 3. I think that's why we saw probably somebody with a ton of money take that 3, and I don't blame them. I wish I had a 3 in my pocket. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the Ravens in that other part of the teaser with Green Bay. I think I'm also going to end up on the Ravens plus 2.5. I'm curious to see how the weather's going to play out, but I do think Lamar Jackson's going to have to play a really good game if they want to win this game. He's going to have to limit his mistakes, and that defense is going to have to get to Josh Allen. Point blank, period, the end. I mean, Stephon Diggs has been such a great weapon for Josh Allen this year. That's what I really think has been the difference maker on that offense, because he's able to basically be Patrick or Mahomes-esque and pull plays out of absolutely, utterly nowhere. There are times where I think the play is dead, and I'm going, how did he just do that? And usually it's when I'm on the other side. That being said, again, I'm going to keep an eye on the weather, look at things. I have a feeling this could be, even if bad weather, snow, wind, we know is a factor in regards to the total, I have a feeling this could be an over-type game. I think we may see some turnovers, and it could be one of those really fun snow games if it ends up getting that type of weather.
Yeah, Josh Allen plays used to be where he'd turn a good play into a bad play, and he would turn the bad plays into good plays too. Now he's cut out the bad plays, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of like you're just waiting for something to happen. Like you're waiting for the pin to drop, and it just never drops. It's very strange because I live in Syracuse. We see all the Buffalo games. I watched a lot of Josh Allen, and I just keep waiting for the implosion, but it never happens. And it's been weird this whole year to just be waiting. Like it's like a bass drop in a song. It just hasn't dropped all year. It's been very strange to watch. Yeah,
and Josh Allen, like the fact that I almost refuse to bet against Josh Allen right now is just the weirdest thing of 2020, 2021. I was really surprised when I was looking at the Bills today. If it weren't for the Hail Murray, they would be on an 11-game winning streak right now. So it just shows you like what they've been able to do. Josh Allen's been a huge part of it. Yeah, let's move on to the next game. We got Browns at Chiefs. Chiefs are a 10-point favorite, a total of 57.5, which has moved up recently. Browns, got the win last week with a +5 turnover differential against Pittsburgh. But Chiefs should be the Super Bowl favorite. So what are you seeing in this game, Kelly?
The Chiefs are basically the Super Bowl favorites. This is a really tough one. This one is begging for me to take the double digits here with the Browns. This is the first time that they've been even a touchdown dog, let alone a double-digit dog, all season long. And we know Kansas City is atrocious against the spread. You pay a premium each and every week. They're on pins and needles trying not to lose games that they should be blowing teams out. Cleveland, on the flip side, they just got their monkey off their back ×2. They finally win a playoff game and in Pittsburgh with no head coach. This is kind of one of those games where I think if Cleveland happens to score first or happens to get a turnover like they did early on against Pittsburgh, and they go up 7-0, maybe they go up 10-3, you might look for a Kansas City money line in game. I don't think I'm going to get involved. I think if I bet this game, it's going to be in game, and I'm going to be looking for a spot here. There are so many conflicting things here that I already mentioned that are dragging me in one way. Like I said, it looks so easy for me to take Cleveland. So easy. And I think the reason why the line is as high as it is at 9.5 is because the bookmakers know that the whole world will have Kansas City in a teaser. So they said, fine, we're going to make it 9.5, we're going to make it 10, and just kind of cut that whole deal out. If you want to lay -150 for a 7.5-point teaser, then you go right ahead. And that's really why I think we're seeing this line this high, because to me, this is a 7.5, 8-point game on paper. So at 9.5, 10, I have me looking towards the Browns. I don't know, last week, is there such thing as a letdown spot in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I feel like with the animosity towards Pittsburgh, sure, you could pitch me on that. You could sell me on that for sure. Yeah, it'll be a fun game. I think that the Browns, an interesting team for sure. Like, when I look at my stuff, it says I should bet the Browns, but like, there's such a big mental block. It's like, it is like we were talking about before. Like, I don't want to bet on Jared Goff because it's burned me so many times. I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes out of like principle. Like, it just feels wrong to root against him at any time. So I understand where you're coming from there. And I think the no play from a mental sanity perspective, probably the right way to go here. So let's finish up with the Bucks at the Saints. The Saints 3-point favorites here. Total is 51.5. We've actually seen this matchup twice so far this year, but a lot earlier in the year. It was in week 1 and week 9, and the Saints took care of business in both those games. Is that something you care about when you're trying to diagnose a third matchup between teams, or do you think it could over-influence the line? What does that factor into your process?
You know, that's really interesting because I like to put aside the regular season here. I did have the Saints week 1 versus the Bucks. I could not wait to get to the window and bet against Tom Brady. And then week 9, I took the Bucks at home at 4.5. And when it closed at 3, I knew I had a loser. I remember sitting in front of my camera before I had to give my best bet for Bleacher Report. And I was like, don't bet this. It's going to be a loser. And everybody's like, why would you say that? And I go, I can tell you by the line move. The reverse line movement on the Saints, I knew I was absolutely dead in the water. What are you going to do? At that point in time, it's too late to bet off. You don't want to middle yourself. It is what it is. But I think it's important to put this aside because I think this Bucks team, since that week 9 blowout, has showed a lot of promise. Now, we joked about Tom Brady's bedtime. This is a real thing. Tom Brady, 0-4-1 against the spread in primetime night games on either Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night. 2-3 straight up. And one of those, they probably should have lost to the Giants. They did squeak out a win against Washington football team. I really don't think there's a lot of line value here. And what I ended up doing, and I was glad that one of my co-hosts on Bet On It, Yanni Corrales, said this on our show today. I had already bet Saints money line. I laid 160, and that's not something I would normally do. But I feel like you're right. The 3 being such a key number, I feel like this game could land 3. But I do think that the Saints will win this game. I know that they have kind of that negative narrative about their home playoff games, especially in recent years. But if we learned anything from that Bears game, I do think that they have the refs in their pocket. Somebody wants Drew Brees to get a little bit farther in his last year as a starting quarterback. That's just really all I've got on this game. I could see the Bucs coming out and having a huge game in some revenge type situation. I saw on Twitter earlier that people were trying to argue back and forth about how hard it was to beat a team 3 times in a year. I don't think that's really the case. I think you have to take this as a 1-game sample size for what it is and not buy into too much of what happened to the regular season.
Well, I think the tougher part about it, too, is it was such different contexts for both those games because week 1 is the first time that Tom Brady's played in this offense. Week 9 is the first game with Antonio Brown. Like, it doesn't matter, like, effectively. So I think that you throwing those out is the right way to play things because it's a different offense. It's not the same team right now. And I think that, like, if you're trying to look at numbers for the Bucs, it makes sense to kind of throw a lot of the season out because they're just a different offense right now. So it'll be fun to see how things play out. And you got the Saints minus 166 on the money line, or you had minus 160 there for that. But it should be a fun weekend of games. That's Kelly Stewart. Make sure you check her out on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas. Kelly, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Hopefully we can make divisional round as profitable for you as wildcard round was as well.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Covering the future.
Big thank you once again to Kelly Stewart for swinging by and breaking down the divisional round and chatting about all things for all 4 games this weekend. Make sure you follow Kelly on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas and check out all of her work at Bleacher Report, Wager Talk, and the Bet On It podcast. Let's move now to our covering the future and stick with the divisional round of this weekend. We're going to stick with Sunday's game. Ed, you want to talk Bucks versus Saints. What are you seeing in that one?
Yeah, I think all the metrics point to a pretty tight game between, in my mind, 2 of the primary Super Bowl contenders. My best numbers have New Orleans by 2.4 points. That's certainly not the biggest. The market's at 3. That's certainly not the biggest discrepancy in between my predictions and the market. But this is the game I like the most, and I think you have to look behind what simply my numbers say. And so let's dig into it. I mean, I just believe in Tampa Bay more than I do New Orleans. You had mentioned that I talked about the higher upside that they have on offense we've started to see that. I think since I talked about it, they've looked pretty good. If you want some quantitative support for that, let's talk about their PFF passer grades, right? So Brady is 92.6, the second in the NFL, way higher than Drew Brees at 73. And I think scheme is playing a big role in this evaluation. Brady has the highest ADOT, or average depth of target, in the NFL. It's 9.1 yards. And this is what you expect from a Bruce Arians offense. They're going to try to take shots down the field, and they have the receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, despite all those drops he had in the Washington game, to get that done, right? And in contrast, New Orleans has really been a dink and dunk kind of offense with Drew Brees. And you've seen his ADOT, his average depth of target, just decrease over the last couple of seasons. 7.1 in 2018, 6.4 in 2019, and 6.0 this year. So, Tampa Bay is promising a more explosive offense. You can also look at the pass defense. That's the other reason. And in general, when I'm looking at games, I'm almost exclusively looking at quarterback and how good the coverage is. So New Orleans actually has a better pass defense. When I look at my adjusted success rate on passing plays, they're 4th, whereas Tampa Bay is 8th. So both good. Definitely seems like New Orleans is better. But Tampa Bay definitely has the better PFF cover grade. So they're 6th in the NFL compared to 18th for New Orleans. I've definitely had my doubts about Marshawn Latimer, a guy who came in 4 years ago and was like a big boon. Basically New Orleans' defense was awful until they drafted him. And I'm not saying he's the only reason why they've gotten better, but they got good when he came into the league, and his cover grade at PFF has really dropped every year since he's been in here and now into his 4th year. PFF doesn't really like either of their other cover guys. So, and we know Tampa Bay's defense is good. And I think above and beyond that, there's something that I can't quite put my finger on about kind of the upside in Tampa Bay and a little bit of doubt about New Orleans. I mean, I remember talking to Dr. Eric Eager before the season even started, and we were talking about, New Orleans looks good by the numbers, but there's just something not quite right about them. I had Chris Andrews, the director of the South Point Casino Sportsbook, on my podcast, and he said the same thing. It's hard to describe exactly what we're trying to get at in this game, but I think that feeling definitely points towards Tampa Bay. So I hope I've made a pretty good argument numerically for why I'm favoring Tampa Bay, but there's also some undescribability in there as well.
Yeah, and I think that we saw some of the, like we talked about before, some of the validity for that thinking last week, because I know the game against Washington wound up being kind of close in theory, the final score was kind of close, but the numbers that Tom Brady put up in that game were really good when you look at them on a per drop back basis. And I would argue, if you adjust for opponent, probably his best showing of the entire year, potentially. And that's kind of what you want to see. And it makes sense, too, because I was worried about them going in, because for the full season, Brady had really struggled against defenses that could generate a pass rush. Washington, obviously, that's their strength. That's what they do, is generate a pass rush. But in that game, 0.42 expected points per dropback for Tom Brady. That's an unreal number. He had been at negative 0.09 against top 10 pass defenses prior to that game, but they also hadn't faced a lot of good pass defenses since Antonio Brown was fully integrated in the offense. So you get them at full strength with more time in this Bruce Arians offense. It makes sense Tom Brady to have a shorter learning curve for this Arians offense than guys like Jameis Winston did, even Carson Palmer. It makes sense Tom Brady be a little bit better with regards to those things than those guys would. And I think that kind of justified your argument that this offense has upside, because they played well against a tough defense at a time when you would expect them to do so. So I thought that really did validate your thought process in saying that they had upside that they hadn't shown previously. And I think that if you want a quantitative way to look at this offense, leaning heavily on what they did against Washington would be your best route for doing so.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's part of it. I mean, probably Brady might have had his worst game against this New Orleans defense in the middle of the season too. Right. I don't put too much stock into that. I think, if you let him play again, he's going to have a pretty good game. Right. Basically, with his skill, with the receivers that he has, the magnitude of the game, I think they're going to be just fine.
The only negative here is that the sleepy Tom Brady narrative might come into play. It's a 6:40 kickoff, and he goes to bed at 8. So second half, Tom might just tank. Yeah,
I mean, if he pushes it back to 9 they've been in a bunch of primetime games this year, so he's probably had to adjust a little bit.
No, give him some extra avocado ice cream. He'll be fine. So that'll keep him up. Keep him up for an extra hour and hopefully get that game deep enough to get a full Tom Brady. I want to talk about the game earlier in the day on Sunday and talk about the Browns against the Chiefs. And I don't want to touch this spread. This spread scares me a lot. I think the Browns will do well in this game, but it's really tough to justify betting them plus 10 because their defense sucks. And I would need to count on their defense to make stops to bet them plus 10, and I have no confidence they will do that. So instead, I'm going to bet them to go over their team total, which is 23.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook, minus 108 on the over there. And the reason for optimism there is twofold. The first one is that this Chiefs defense just kind of okay. They definitely took a step back as the season went along. They finished the year ranked 20th in schedule-adjusted defense based on numberFire's metrics. They were 15th against the pass and 29th against the rush. And we know the Browns can run the ball successfully. I think they should be able to move the ball there. But they can probably do pretty well through the air, too, because Baker Mayfield averaged 0.37 passing net expected points per dropback against middling pass defense this year. He was solid against good defenses, too. So I would expect Baker to be able to do something here. And they're expecting to get Joel Bitonio back for this game. Their stud guard. That's in addition to getting Kevin Stefanski back and Kadero Hodge. This will likely be the most complete Browns offense that we've seen since the Odell Beckham injury. They've had receivers be out left and right. They've had Wyatt Teller out. They've had Bitonio out now. They've had a lot of moving pieces, but it looks like they should be pretty close to full strength for, again, one of the first times since Beckham got hurt. I would bet they'll be efficient on offense in this game. And it's also a pace-up spot because the Chiefs throw a ton, so they rank 7th in situation-neutral pace, according to Football Outsiders. I don't know if the Browns will cover here because I really don't want to put any faith in this defense. That scares me so much. But I feel better about their team total. So give me the over here, 23.5, minus 108 for Cleveland and Kansas City. I think that's the safest route for getting exposure to the Browns while avoiding touching the defense. Ed, what are you thinking about this game here? Do you think Cleveland's offense can move the football here, or is it just total domination on the part of the Chiefs?
I mean, I think total domination on the part of the Chiefs. But, I mean, we did see Cleveland. I mean, maybe we should give some credit to what they did against, the best defense in the NFL last week. It was ugly. They dominated. So they should get a little bit of credit for that. Rashad Fenton has played really well in the secondary for the Chiefs, and he's listed as questionable. He probably plays. Again, the importance of coverage guys in evaluating games. So that's definitely another factor in your favor for liking the over.
Yeah, we had talked about Tom Brady against Washington, Baker Mayfield against Pittsburgh, 0.46 passing net expected points per dropback for him there. So a really solid game against a tougher defense than what we'll see this week. It helps that there won't be a full crowd in Kansas City this week, too, so it's not the full Arrowhead effect working against the Browns here. So not expecting a win, not banking on a cover either, but I do think that they will at least get me to 24 points. We can have a good weekend on Sunday. That is all that we have for today. Once again, a big thank you to Kelly Stewart. Follow her on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas and check out all of her work, the Bet On It podcast, also at Bleacher Report and at Wager Talk. Thank you to Kelly once again. Ed, what is going on for you this week over at the Power Rank?
Yeah, so writing my free email newsletter, so sign up for that at thepowerrank.com. Was really pumped to have Chris Andrews, bookmaker at South Point Casino in Las Vegas. Had a great conversation about all 4 games. And then, if you want my best predictions, you can either become a member of the site, but I've also have a separate product, the NFL Playoff Report. So you can learn about both of them at thepowerrank.net. That'll take you a place on my site where you can learn more. And since we don't have the wildcard games anymore, you can use the code POWER to get $10 off the NFL Playoff Report. So I'd obviously rather have you as a member of the site, but I'm pretty sure this is the least expensive any of my analytics have ever been on the site. So use that code POWER for $10 off.
All right, perfect. Check that out. Have you read Chris Andrews' book?
Then One Day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's hilarious.
Okay, I think that's my off-season go-to. I think I need to check that out this year because I haven't yet, and I want to. So I think that'll be on my checklist. So check that out. Go ahead.
some of the things that bookmakers have done will put you into fits of laughter.
Well, I wanted to read it when we had him on on our show. I was like, okay, I need to read this, but I never got around to it. Like, we had a pandemic. I had plenty of time to do so, but like, I did other dumb stuff instead to occupy my time. But I think I need to, I've got 3 months until baseball kicks up. Might as well use that time to read that because it seems like a fascinating subject. And Chris himself, a fascinating guy. So definitely need to get into that. And you can also, again, like Ed said, check him out on the Football Analytics Show. So that's my off-season homework, Ed, is Then One Day. That
sounds good. You should read Then One Day because he's writing Then One Year, which is kind of a year in the life of a bookmaker. And actually happens right through the pandemic. So that's his next project. So he's got that and actually like a fiction book coming out too.
Really?
So a lot of Chris Andrews reading to be done.
Busy guy. Doing all that while also running South Point. So a busy guy. So check that out on the Football Analytics Show. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Our daily fantasy podcast going up tomorrow with myself and Brandon Gadula breaking down the divisional round, both the Saturday and the Sunday only slates. And of course, discussion on the 4-game slate too. So that'll be up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed tomorrow, roughly around 11:30 or so. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets for the divisional round. Back with you once again next week to preview the conference championships. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.